Welcome to the Real Estate Brief. I'm Adam. Today we're going to be cutting through the noise. We're going to get to the truth that we find inside of all news articles. We're going to look at the data and what it's actually saying. I'm going to give you some of my own observations and where I believe that you can find opportunity, because I truly do believe that you can find opportunity in every single news article that you read. And that's what we're going to be doing here today. So if you're ready to gain your real estate edge, let's dive into our very first story. And like I said, we're going to be starting with this article by San, by San.com. San.com. And the title of this, and the question that is being asked is the era of the all-powerful real estate agent over? Okay, that is the question that is being posed to us today. And we're going to be reading through this article and dissecting it just a little bit. Now, I will add, I do think that ads like this and headlines like this are probably more focused on clickbait type idea, right? More so than maybe what's going on. So we're going to dive into this article and kind of work through this. But what I will say is a headline like this, when you read headlines like this is beginning to get to the very question of the necessity of our profession, right? That's what is being called into question. So let's not miss that. When that question is being posed, we got to understand that they are getting to the root of the necessity of what we do as real estate agents, okay? So we do not want to ignore what is being said. We want to go into this and talk through this, right? Especially, when you start calling into question what our roles do as real estate agents and how we operate, we got to understand that what a lot of people don't really begin to grasp is the complexity of the financial transaction that is involved in real estate and how much the real estate agent helps navigate that process. Okay, so that's really where we're going to try to land. All right, so let me see if I can scoot this over. And I'm sorry, those on TikTok, I cannot share my screen on there. I'm working through copyright strikes and figuring out what they allow and don't allow. And I've not read through that document just yet to make sure that I'm in compliance. Hopefully here soon, I can get time to do that. And if you guys know out there what that is, throw it in the comments there and I'll look at that. All right, here is the article here, and we'll abbreviate this at the very moment here. It says this: why this story matters. Okay, this is they're setting the stage just a little bit. It says changes to real estate commission rules are shifting negotiation power to home buyers, altering industry practices and requiring greater transparency about agent compensation. Now, this is the interesting thing about this, and I don't know what brought this article to be written now. This is, and you can see the date. It says February 2nd, 2026 at 6 a.m. Eastern time, and it's by Joanne Cleaver. I'm just curious on what triggered this article to be written now, because that very moment right there, it says changes to real estate commission rules are shifting. We've been doing this for about 2 years now. So I'm just kind of curious on like what triggered this entire concept to be written about right now. We've talked about this many times, but the reason why I'm honing in is because it's popping its little head back up, and I feel like we need to do a little bit of pushback on this. All right, so it says commission structure changes. It says a recent legal ruling has altered how real estate commissions are negotiated and disclosed, making it necessary for agents to discuss compensation with buyers upfront and allowing buyers to negotiate these fees. Now, look, recent, subjective at best, right? But what I would say is there is truth in what that statement means, right? We all know that as real estate agents that there is, when we went through that legal battle, there is now more transparency in the way that we operate and the way we earn our money as far as representing buyers or representing sellers and that kind of, and what that looks like, right? We had a lot of changes on that arena and in that field. So that's true. There's nothing going crazy there. I would agree with that. Now, where I would push back just a little bit in that statement is the negotiating these fees. What I'm not pushing back against is that's true, but it's always been the case. Like I've been doing this for so long. It's like when a deal gets to a point and money becomes a factor, agents will work with their clients to try to get the deal to close because that's what we want to do. So this law change and all this legality stuff literally did not change the negotiation ability of the client. It did make it, made the client more aware about what their cost was and what they were actually paying. I could say that's probably true. But as far as negotiations go, when push comes to shove, we would negotiate all the time on our commission. Most agents that I know would negotiate on commissions, even against my own better judgment sometimes. Like I think you're worth what you want to charge, to be honest. So anyway, it says buyers now have increased leverage and options in negotiating agent payments and terms, giving them opportunities to potentially lower costs or choose alternative representation agreements or arrangements. Industry adaptation. Real estate agents and brokerages are adjusting their practices in response to new rules, including formalized contracts, new negotiation dynamics, and increased education for both buyers and sellers. This has been going on for a while. So anyway, I'm kind of curious on what has brought this on. And she gives a summary about why this has happened. I'm not going to read that. We all know that we have shifted and what this looks like. We're going to jump down to here. More than just a buyer's market. All right, she's going to say, North Carolina mortgage broker Michael Carter deals with confused buyers all day long, forcing him to explain what's new and different. So let me just pause there. Another example of why you need a real estate agent. So, I mean, if the mortgage broker is having to explain more stuff than they used to, chances are that buyer doesn't have a good agent, right? So get an agent. Seasoned homeowners can't rely on prior experience as fundamental aspects of the broker commission structure have changed. He told Straight Arrow News. Oh, that's what SAN that makes sense. All right, Straight Arrow News. I didn't read the logo there. So that's what SAN stands for, Straight Arrow News. In an interview, new buyers face daunting rounds of negotiations to ensure their best interests are truly represented, and everyone must grapple with the ways that the new rules ripple through mortgage lending. Carter said, one key change for buyers, according to Gorlick, agents must now discuss compensation before they embark on a house hunting with potential clients. That's true, right? When we as agents need to go out and show a property, we have to have an agreement disclosing how we're going to be compensated. All right. That is true. That is where we're at. But again, not new. This has been going on for a couple years now. So let's just continue. So much of that was behind closed doors before. For years and years, buyers and agents never talked about compensation, she said. Never. Now, again, I would disagree. Like, I when I was representing buyers and sellers, you have these conversations every time you go into a listing appointment or you deal with a buyer. These questions would come up. To say never, again, not true. It's not true. We had these conversations all the time. Now, would some agents not have that discussion? Okay, probably. But to say it never happened, I mean, it's just crazy. In the past, sellers paid a commission to a property's listing agent, a required step to get it into the all-important multiple listing service, which feeds listings to powerhouse platforms like Zillow, Homes.com, and regional listing services. Behind the scenes, in a section of the listing now visible to the public, listings included the commission offered to agents. Yep. That's what it did. I mean, it showed, if I went in and listed a house, it offered compensation to both parties. We negotiated that up front. The seller agreed to give a certain percentage to the buyer's agent that came and sold their property. It was an incentive. It was to incentivize them to bring it and guarantee their pay, right? That's what it was. So has that shifted? Yeah, it's shifted, right? Now the buyer agent goes in and they negotiate what their fee is going to be. They come in agreement with their buyer, and then they go look for houses, and then it's right where it was started, right? Traditionally, the total commission was and remains about 5 to 6%. Half of that went to each broker. Real estate agents, I'm not going to labor on this. You know how this works, right? This is not rocket science. I'm just going to pause for just a second though, because this whole thing came up, and this is the part that just kind of just rubs me. And it's like, fine, I don't really care that the law happened and changes. We can navigate change. We're used to doing this as real estate agents. But to sit here and the whole premise behind this whole lawsuit, right, was that there was price fixing going on and there was communication amongst agents and these type of conversations. And I can speak for myself. I never had a conversation outside of my own brokerage about what we want to charge. It was never a conversation across the board with anybody. It was even all the boards and committees I sat on, we were hammered to not talk about it. And it was shut down in every single moment. Now, I can't say that it didn't happen, and I'm not saying that, but I'm saying to make it out to as if we went around talking about what we're charging and that the commission was being offered in MLS, and we somehow this conclusion that this is the fee and this is the standard and all this kind of verbiage was not the case. We did not talk about that. And like I said earlier, we cut commission all the time. It was always negotiable. That was always a factor. And they argued that, well, it became more of like, where it remains the 5 to 6%. And they made the argument to make it sound like we got together and we price fixed it at that commission rate. That actually defies the logic of way, consumers actually operate, right? Because if we apply that same kind of logic, then we would have to apply that same kind of discipline to, let's say, a fast food joint that sells a burger. Because if you look across McDonald's, Burger King, and other places, if that restaurant follows the same type of premise as the rest of them, guess what ends up happening? The consumer and the way they consume the product set the price of what they're willing to pay. And if they don't want to pay that, they go elsewhere and they pay what they want, forcing the other company maybe who's charging too much to reduce their cost. That's just the way economies work. And that's the way it works when you're running a business. So you could make an argument and say, well, there's price fixing going on in the burger industry, and this is where we've landed, and this is what we're going to charge for our burgers, $3. And I talked to Burger King, I'm McDonald's, and I talked to Burger King, and we decided we're going to make it $3 for the burger, so the consumer can't win, right? That's one argument, but did McDonald's and Burger King get together and talk about how much the burger's going to cost? I mean, it's just, again, I'm not saying we need to change anything. I'm not griping about the law changes, and we're not going to do that. I think it's been a great thing. The whole transparency of how buyers pay for commissions and all that, great. I'm all for transparency, and I wasn't even against these changes really. To be honest, yeah, let's go in and let's talk about what I'm charging as a buyer's agent. Let's go in and talk about what I'm talking about with the seller's agent. But to then take one position of an extreme and make it as an accusation that the whole is doing this, I think was just a leap. Right? I think it was more about money grab than anything, to be honest. Anyway, that's my soapbox. Sorry. Oh gosh. All right. Technically, the total commission and how it was split was always negotiable. Yep. The National Association of Realtors has insisted in numerous public statements, but a group of Missouri homeowners filed a suit. We know all this. In October 2020, they won. Yeah, that's fine. By summer 2024, the Sitzer-Burnett decision rippled through the home selling and buying process. One new rule requires buyers who want to engage. We know we have to have that. Buyers in the driver's seat. Here's the headline. Buyers in the driver's seat. Going into the spring selling season, buyers have plenty of power to negotiate in all directions. A new survey from Redfin, the National Residential Real Estate Brokerage, found that nationally, there were 47.1% more home sellers than buyers at year end, up 22.2 percentage points from the end of 2024. In December, according to the NAR, pending home sales dropped 9.3% from November. The buyer's market is slowing the transition to a new default of negotiated commissions. For the moment, buyers have the clout to dictate that sellers pick up the cost of both agents involved in the transaction. So there's a lot in this statement. First of all, those percentages, okay, sure, you can make the argument the buyer has position to start buying and all this kind of stuff, and there's leverage and all this kind of stuff. But those percentages don't explain that this law changed the way commissions are structured. All that those statistics tell you is what's actually happening in the market where the shift is taking place. And it doesn't mean anything about who's paying commission. Those percentages have nothing to do with a buyer or seller and what they're paying commissions, right? That has everything to do with just the shift of the economy in the housing sector, right? That's what those percentages mean. So, and then the whole idea that the buyers are in the driver's seat, well, okay, they can negotiate like they always have been. And sure, go in and talk and negotiate with your agent. But here's the reality though, is an agent that understands their value and can articulate that value doesn't compromise on whatever fee they're charging. They have their fee. That's what they charge. And some agents will charge different fees. Fine, great. They can do that. But what buyers need to do is pay attention to the value that they're getting for the fee, just as if you're going out shopping for any kind of service, right? You might pay a little more for a certain type of car versus the other car that does the exact same thing. It gets you point A to point B. But your experience in this car is a little bit better than it was in this car, right? So you might save money to buy this car, but then you get better traction and better longevity out of this car, right? So sure, you can negotiate, but it's not about just the fee. If all you're focused on is the commission being paid and how much it's going to cost, you might miss the best value package that protects you as the buyer, right? So a really good agent articulates their value, doesn't just charge a fee and just says, that's what I charge. They can validate their fee. So you agents out there, we have shifted though, right? It's no longer just this, I get paid. You do have to prove your value. You do have to articulate your value. And to be honest, this law change has helped us do that. I will say it has strengthened the importance of value in the agent to the consumer. And I think that is a good thing. I think those type of changes elevate our professionalism way higher than most other types of sales positions, because we are doing something that is extremely difficult for people that hardly do this type of transaction. So for that, I think it's great. But the reality is, it's not just about that bottom commission dollar, right? It is about the value that you bring. All right, so, let's jump on down. Workarounds abound. So here's the next argument, right? It says simply paying a buyer's agent a flat fee, or say 1% of the purchase price, isn't as easy as it sounds, Carter said. Most buyers take out mortgages, and traditionally the commission was integrated into the loan amount. But if the buyer's agent is paid outside the commission structure, the buyer must come up with that money on their own, he said, or get creative. All right. We've seen this in many different ways. You know, you can roll this. Most buyers are rolling this into their loan if the appraised value works for that and that kind of stuff. And I will say, there's still a lot of sellers that are willing to pay commissions as well. That's still very common, because a seller wants to sell their house and they want as much people coming through it as possible. So they want their agent letting them know, hey, we'll pay some percentages towards this, right? All right, buyers agents have had to fine-tune the justification for their services. After all, there's nothing to prevent buyers from representing themselves. Okay, true. And we do have to articulate our value. We have to make sure that what we are telling our clients is actually going to help them. It's addressing the needs that they need. But now I would caution anyone that's writing the article about representing themselves. Yeah, you can do that. And I'm going to give you a little bit of my opinions on the risks of representing yourself after I get through this article. But my advice would for a buyer never to do that. They need representation. They need protection. They need people that understand the intricate details of what contracts say, what timelines look like, right? All those things. We are valuable. And to advise somebody to represent themselves, I'd be very, very cautious to do that, because it can cost them thousands of dollars, and even in the worst case scenarios, litigation. So unrepresentation for the most complex purchase of your life, it's not wise. All right, some buyers tiptoe through the process, signing agreements with agents to represent them for a single property or for a short period of time. That all happens. There's all kinds of exclusive buyers realty agreements, from one-time showings to multiple times and all that kind of stuff. There's all kinds of variations there. It says one danger zone, so-called dual agency, in which one agent represents both the seller and the buyer. Dual agency allows agents to claim both sides of the commission, potentially offering a discount to both parties to sweeten the deal. But it also is ethically suspect, said DeFelice, as neither the buyer nor the seller has an agent wholly devoted to their interests. So, and he says this: if I was an active buyer, I would never work with a dual agent, said Gorlick. How can one be a fiduciary to both sides? It's impossible. Look, there's a good, valid argument to be had there. I think it's a very precarious balancing act, and to give full fiduciary responsibilities one way or the other, it seems like a disaster. But it's legal in a lot of places. Okay, so it is a thing. And then you have to be very understanding too about what dual agency means. Dual agency in most states. In my state, dual agency is the broker is the agent, right? The real estate agent working underneath the broker is part of that agency. So dual agency is every single time. So just because you might be represented by one agent in that brokerage and on the seller side, and then the buyer is represented on this with an agent in that same brokerage, that is still actually considered dual agency. Right now, there's a little bit more of a fiduciary barrier there, but as far as legal terms concerned in my state, that's still a dual agency arrangement. So your state might be a little bit different there, but that is still a dual agency. So being aware of that, and that's where, as real estate agents, we need to be very careful when we are working with clients that we do articulate what agency is. Consumer guide to agencies in your markets is very crucial, and it's not just here, sign this. It is sitting down with your buyer and your sellers and explaining how agency works. That is definitely valuable, because you want to be very clear who represents who and what the fiduciary responsibilities are. Now, let me just go back to the whole the statement here, though, is the argument says I would never advise that. But here is the reality, though, is if you also advise a buyer to go unrepresented, that buyer does not understand agency relationships. And they could easily go see a house and say, I'm representing myself. I'm taking the position of working for myself. I don't need an agent. I've done this many times. They take that position, and they can do that to save themselves money. What they need to understand, though, and if you're going to advise them, is when they enter into that situation, that agent that they're conversing with only represents the party on the other side, right? So that person going into that situation might not realize how good at negotiation that other agent is, and how what they say ultimately affects their negotiation ability. So again, having an agent is a barrier to that negotiations, right? And knowing how to protect their client, ask the right questions without giving away any information that helps them to negotiate. So again, advising somebody not to have an agent is extremely risky. It's extremely risky because, trust me, agents know what they're doing, and they know who they represent, and they know how to represent them extremely well, especially the ones that have been doing it for many years. So they will catch you. If you're a buyer and you're going into proper unrepresented and you want to stay that way, trust me when I say that agent knows exactly what they're doing with their words. They know who they represent, and they know what they're going to do because they owe no fiduciary responsibility to you, and anything you say, they can take it straight to their seller, right? And trust me when I say it will be used against the buyer because it's all about negotiations. And I would be represented. I just would be represented. I wouldn't take that position. I have been on the side of so many deals, guys. So many deals. Highly risky. All right. So that would be like, that's the end of that article, right? So if I was to summarize this, I would say that this article right here, it is exploring the transparency side of our industry. Okay. And bring it to attention. Now, I wonder why they're doing it this time of year. That part, I don't really understand. It's been 2 years while we talk about this. Still good conversation, bring clarity to this. But it does do a good job understanding that these changes did add a transparency to our industry that, quite frankly, we didn't need. I don't have any problem with being very upfront with the people I'm working with, what my fees are, what I charge, how that works, and what that looks like. I have no problem with that. I think that is fair. I think letting the consumer understand how money's paid and where it goes is great. Another thing that this law has done that has been a really good thing is it's forced the agent to be way more intentional with representing the buyer. It's no longer just about going out and just, you get a call and just immediately going out and showing a house and then making a deal. You have to be relationship focused and being more of a value back before the buyer will commit to signing any kind of commitment with you. And I think that just elevates our professionalism. So when I look at this law and I think about what it actually did, I'm thankful for it. And that sounds odd, right? But I am thankful for it because it did elevate our professionalism to some degree, and it added some transparency there. And I think that's a good thing. Now, again, I think this article citing the lawsuit as a catalyst for decoupling and how, you know, buyers' view of representation has shifted and all this kind of stuff. I actually don't think that's true. My experience has been that if anything, these changes in these lawsuits have actually done what I just said. They have elevated our professionalism. They have helped us to be able to articulate our value better, and has not decoupled. It's done the opposite. I think it's made more valuable the real estate agent, the good agents, right? The good agents are way more valuable now because of this lawsuit. That's what's happened. And for that, again, I'm thankful. I don't think this article is doing it right. I don't think it's trying to get to the point and trying to elaborate on the concept of this, but it's leaning towards the idea that it wasn't like this before, like you couldn't negotiate. It just takes a more negative opinion on it. And I just don't agree with that. I think that's just not the way it is, right? I just don't. Let me show you. I'm going to go over just a couple. As I was pondering this, because this is kind of a topic, so I kind of extracted just a few thoughts behind this, and this is more of probably my challenge to you guys, and as a conversation to end this article just a little bit, is I want you as an agent, I want you to think through what your value is, right? We are no longer just finding homes for people, all right? Apps can do that. Apps can go out and find homes for people. What we are ultimately trying to do is help our clients navigate a very complex legal and financial minefield. All right. That's what apps can't do. That's what portals can't do. They can give information, but they can't break down the complexities of all that information that's being thrown at the buyers and the sellers. They can't articulate that and put that into a simple way of understanding what is going on. They don't have that ability. AI can do some of that, but again, there's so much noise. What buyers and sellers are looking for is an advocate in their field, on their side, helping them to navigate this very complex legal and financial minefield. So when you start talking about your value as a buyer's agent or even as a seller's agent, it is very important that you understand your contracts, you understand the legal ramifications of those contracts, your timelines and everything like that, how the financial makeup looks, your closing sheets and what that looks like, how title works, what deeds are, how they correspond to what kind of title and deed you take. Like those are the intricate details that an agent brings to the table. And then on top of that is the negotiation part of the piece, right? Understanding how to truly protect your client in all negotiations. So you are the financial guard, right? This isn't about price, it's about value. Okay, we can figure out price, and most consumers can find out what an asking price is of property, and they can find all that kind of stuff out, right? They can go on Zillow right now and find out what the asking price is. But what they don't understand is that's not market value, right? They don't understand that asking price is not what the market's going to bring. What does agents do? Well, we understand absorption rate. We understand that, hey, if you have this amount of inventory in this one market, and this is what's sitting, you have more negotiation power than one has a lower absorption rate in that market, right? So as an agent that understands the data and can articulate the data, it's found in the MLS, they can take that information and help their client navigate into markets and areas that they have a better negotiation ability to save more money. Trust me, consumers are not thinking that way. They're not thinking like that. And the articles that they're reading, all this noise, they miss all that, right? And then what about the understanding about certain repairs to make, right? Like we see this type of stuff all the time. Like when you get an inspection report, buyers can fall into the trap. They want everything done. But sometimes by just doing that, you're just inflating the price and you're negating some of the negotiation ability going back to save yourself money. If you fix those things later after closing to save yourself a lot of money. We understand those intricate details, right? Old roof, new roof, cracked foundation, not cracked foundation, split drywall, whatever it may be, paint, peeling paint, like all these little indicators that we see all the time. And what about the over improving concept, right? Protecting the equity of the home. What does an agent do? Well, we prevent and we advise our clients from over improving for the neighborhood that they find themselves in. Like we'll tell them, it's like, hey, I wouldn't pay a premium for this remodel because this is the return of that type of remodel and you're not gonna get your money back. We understand those intricate details, right? And we can be the advisor when they ask us questions about what's going on. But now what does that mean for us? That means we have to know our data. We have to understand what our market is doing, what the homes are selling, what price point they're selling at, and what that looks like. That's what we have to know. So as agents, we've got to get in the data and understand that and bring value back to our clients because it's not about the price anymore, right? We manage contingencies. What about all the contingencies in there and the time frames and negotiations of repairs and appraisals and all these negotiations that we have to do outside of just negotiating the market price, right, for the client, right? We don't just add the contingencies in there. We'll customize them depending upon what the lender wants and what they look at, right? We have an understanding about how all those things work, right? We understand those things. So that's where the agent shines. That's where the agent shines. And that's where we lean into as agents. So what would I do if I was you guys, right? If you have a listing presentation and you go in and your buyer presentations, all those type of things, I would go in and I'll just say this, go through your presentations and your talk track at your meetings and stuff like that you do. And just go through and remove anything in there that talks about just things that they can find on their own. Like I have the keys to your brand new home or verbiage like that, right? Any language that talks about things that they can do on their own and change that to things where I manage your risk, right? Think through all the things I just mentioned just now and break that down and figure out where it is that you ultimately provide value back to that consumer. Don't mention things that they can find on their own. It doesn't really provide anything value back. Find the things that helps manage their risk. and pour that into your presentations, right? In your meetings and your consultations and things like that, right? I mean, and then be ready to explain why you charge what you charge. Clearly articulate your value proposition with transparency, which builds trust, and understand why you charge what you charge. Whatever that fee is, you justify that fee and why you do that, right? And then I would double down on negotiation training, because that's something that AI cannot do. That's something that it can give you advice, but it can't negotiate deals like you can. So double down on negotiation. Get really good at negotiations. All right, very good. There we go. Let me zoom in just a little bit here. We are switching now to article number 2. So this is a reality check type piece, right? We're going to get into what I call like a reality check. So Terry Savage here in this article at terrysavage.com. Terry Savage takes a sovereign look at kind of like the interest rate, inventory, and here's the reality. It is a reality check for those that are looking for and waiting for some kind of magic rate drop or magic pill to enter into the market that will automatically just change everything around. All right. So as we read through this, she's going to get into where she talks about the lock-in effect, which I keep mentioning in other videos and things like that. You can check out those later. But talking about what that looks like, why homeowners are staying in their home and keeping their 3% rates and that kind of stuff, and what shift we're seeing. And it's just another person's opinion on what we've been talking about, right? She's going to get into kind of about inflationary pressures that are keeping the Fed kind of cautious on dropping rates too high or going higher and all that kind of stuff. And really that we're just going to be kind of staying right where we are. She's also going to address some of the affordability that remains, some of the hurdles that we need to come over and kind of work through, like first-time home buyers and then the current economy and the affordability gap and all that kind of stuff. So I won't be laboring on this too much. We're going to burn through this pretty quickly, but I'm going to hover in just a few of these little articles. So let's just jump into this right here. So this is terrysavage.com. I've never been to her site. It just came up in my news aggregates that I use. And her title, it looks like it says The Money Lady, The Savage Truth. I think I might actually save her a link. I love that. That's pretty good. Let's see here. The housing market, with so much attention focused on the stock market, the housing market has faded into the background a bit. Sellers have been reluctant to give up their older 3% mortgages to buy another, more expensive house, and buyers balked at the current 6% mortgage level, completely forgetting that 40 years ago, many home buyers were willing to accept double-digit interest rates. Great point. Pause there. We're graphing about 6% interest rate. It's been way worse, guys. It has been way worse. So again, people still buy houses, all right? But just as all markets cycle up and down, the housing market seems to be entering a new phase. Redfin reported that in December, more than 40,000 home purchase contracts were canceled. We talked about this last week, and as far as more cancellations, a little bit more data in that. I'll link that in the card somewhere up there. You guys can go back and watch that. I kind of broke down what that actually means. The highest level in a decade. And the Wall Street Journal just headlined, the housing market is swinging toward buyers. The article says the U.S. housing market had over 600,000 more sellers than buyers in December, the biggest such gap on record in seasonally adjusted data going back to 2013. All right, so it says home ownership has always been the basis of the American dream. Let's see, a survey by Citigroup suggests that while about 87% of boomers and 83% of Gen X see home ownership as one of the best ways to build wealth, only roughly 77% of millennials and 65% of Gen Z share that opinion. Now here, I'll pause here. And we talked about this too, is one of the reasons is that affordability gap. When you start looking at the cost of home ownership, your baby boomers and partly of your half of your Gen X generations have the most money. They have the most equity in their homes. They can take the most risk. They also have the most life changes going on, right? A lot of your baby boomers have all their kids have grown up, moved out of the house, maybe are having grandkids. So their life circumstances have changed. Gen X has their kids going off to college, maybe graduating college, maybe coming back. So there's this middle ground. So they have the most equity in their homes, and they have the most life changes. So your demographic, if you're want to get out there and generate business, is going to be found in the boomers and Gen X. That's where they're at right now. The reality is that the 77% millennials that she's mentioned and 65% of Gen Zs, they can't afford it because during the pandemic, most of them were either just graduating or in college and getting out of college. And then the inflation took off, right? It just exploded out the gate. So the affordability gap got really broad. Low interest rates, if you qualified, you could get it. Most of them did not have enough money in the bank to then pay for the loan. They couldn't qualify because they didn't have the job records that they needed to be able to buy. And now we still have this massive affordability gap that has not been addressed. So therefore, boomers, Gen X is your demographic for now, right? So that's where I would lean into right now. So there you go. There's your tip. All right. So let's see. Housing affordability is a hot topic, whether in New York City and a small rural markets, yet rental increases have slowed in recent months. And in some areas, home prices are starting to come down, or at least the asking prices on homes for sale are being lowered. According to the latest survey by the Association of Home Builders, we talked about this too. 40% of builders reported cutting prices in January. The average price reduction was 6% in January, up from 5% rate in December. The use of sales incentives was 65% in January, marking the 10th consecutive month this share has exceeded 60%. I'm sorry, there's a lot of numbers in there. I apologize for that, but let me just really, housing affordability, it is a hot topic. There's all kinds of stuff going on there. But the reality is, as far as like what the National Association of Home Builders is reporting on these changes, the reason why this is actually happening is builders are reducing their costs. Some of them are building multiple homes at once, and so they're saving on the material costs. They're building maybe 3 different types of style of homes, throwing up 3 to 5 units at once, getting the price down, and then they're offering incentives for people to come and buy those homes. So that's helping to move the new built homes a little bit better, right? So that is absolutely happening. And it depends on the market you're in. Some markets are not seeing that. Remember, real estate's local, so certain things happen in certain places. But that's kind of what we're seeing. And what's going to happen here, and this is where that shift is kind of beginning to take place, is job growth is slowing. It's not going as fast as it needs to. So what's happening is homes are sitting on the market a little bit longer. And when that happens and the affordability gap is still there, then it kind of slowly begins to adjust. So the reason why the numbers are coming down is because they're trying to meet that threshold of that buyer and that housing cost gap. So jobs are slowly increasing, prices are going to come down to try to meet in the middle. So the goal here is to try to get the broadest demographic to be able to buy and sell homes. And like we said earlier, we're talking about boomers and Gen X. We're trying to get into the millennials, Gen Y, to be able to buy. And that's that gap, right? Boomers, Gen X, doing fine, to be honest. Not everybody, but majority are. A higher percentage. But that's the gap. We're seeing that in that next buying phase, the next wave of buyers and sellers are struggling. And that's that gap we're trying to address. So she's doing a great job mentioning that. I think that's just really good. There are signs that the housing market logjam is finally beginning to ease. Builders are still in process of building new homes, even as prices may soften. Labor market remains reasonably strong and unemployment stays stable, right? They're trying to enter in some kind of stability so we can meet that threshold and not go crazy and panic, right? That's simply what's going on here. All right, absent a stock market crash that would spook home buyers, the apparent softening in the housing market means buyers should get prepared to start looking again. Here are the steps you should take if you're a potential home builder. Or home buyer, sorry. So yeah, so obviously we can sit here and speculate all day long about the economy, and that's great. We should analyze these type of things. We can make calculated decisions based on the data that we have, but we can't predict the future and where we go. So she makes a good point here, where she says, like, absent a stock market crash that would spook home buyers, right? So absent of anything changing, anything drastic going one way or the other, this is what we could expect. We should expect a good shift kind of happening here, affordability coming down, income going up, more stabilization of the rates, and all those type of things. That's what we should see. Now, she says first-time home buyers should check for state programs that offer down payment assistance or lower mortgage rates. Shop around, figure out what's being incentives, clean up your credit report, get things paid off, pull your report. You get a free credit report, pull it up, analyze that. If you're a buyer, even if you're an agent, analyze those things and see where you land, right? Start cleaning that stuff up because it ultimately does help you, right? It says if buying a home is your priority, gather the cash for down payment. For many, that means family gifts, but it could also mean postponing a vacation trip or new car purchase. Get your money in line, guys. You need money. You need money to close. It costs money to buy a house. Know your local market. Not all markets will have the same level of activity or demand. Check listings on Zillow, Realtor.com, and so forth to see what's going on. Evaluate your job security, right? Find out if you're not going to lose your job. Pay attention to what's going on in your company you work for or where you work, and make sure you're not going to lose your job before you take on this endeavor. So I think this is just a very good common sense article. She broke down the economy. She was fair. She used data. She didn't go one way or the other. She just talked the facts. So Terry Savage, I applaud you. I applaud you. Not that my opinion matters that much to you, but you're way more equipped than I am at this. But I just, for what I'm doing, I love what I'm reading. Okay. All right. So that's what I would say about that, guys. I mean, I'm not going to harp on some actionable items. Go back and watch some other live streams, because when I talk about the market, those action items are pretty much the same thing, right? Like, figure out a way to understand what's going on in the market, articulate that value to your consumer, and make sure you're on point. And I would spend way more time sharing that than I would anything else. All right, real briefly here, we're going to jump into one of our last two articles here. These last two, we're going to burn through them really fast. This one here is, this is all about domestic migration and what's going on and where people are moving. It's fresh census data that's going to reveal exactly where, you know, kind of like what they're calling like the great migration is heading, like what shifts is that we're seeing. And let's just be honest, there is kind of a clear trend toward kind of the South and Midwest. So if you're in those regions, that's where you capitalize on a lot of people moving into your area. Those that are in other areas, pay attention to what's going on and figure out agents in those areas that you can begin building a referral business to. So people are leaving your state or your city, well, maybe you can get some referral business, right? So, but that's the point. That's the reason why I'm actually leaning into going through this article, is the very reason of paying attention about what's happening migration-wise. Because if you're in those areas, you want to be aware. If you're not in those areas, you want to be aware. But then also, we want to have the conversation, because what are these states doing that's causing growth and causing people to move there? And what are the other states doing that's causing people to leave? Now, I'm not going to go too heavy on this because I'm going to run out of time. I got to get to meetings. So, all right. So the title is Where Americans Moved in 2025. Carolinas and Idaho see most growth from out-of-state moves. This is by Realtor.com, News and Insights by Keith Griffith. And this was done February 2nd, 2026. It says many Americans voted with their, I got to zoom out just a little bit. It's a little too close. All right. Many Americans voted with their feet last year on the best places to live, creating winners and losers among the states when it comes to growth from out-of-state moves. Relative to their population sizes, South Carolina, Idaho, and North Carolina saw the most growth in 2025. Okay? They saw the most growth. Or the number of people moving in from another state minus those moving out. Okay? So those are two growing states, right? Meanwhile, the states that shrank the most from net domestic migration outflows, meaning more people moved out than in, included New York, Hawaii, Alaska, and California. Okay? Take note. So those are the states that people are moving to the most. These are the states that people are moving out of the most, right? We have to pause for just a second and ask why. Why is this happening? What's causing these things to happen? There's a lot of variables here, guys. And if you're in government in these states, you know, you can applaud whatever is going on in South Carolina, Idaho, and North Carolina and what they're doing as regulations and policies and job growth, whatever it is that they're doing, we need to take note. As on the housing sector, again, I don't care about politics, but on the housing sector, when you start looking at data, it's telling us something. The data is telling us something. Something's going on in New York. Something's going on in Hawaii. Something's going on in Alaska and California. Each one of those states have a different set. Something's happening, making people leave. All right. Housing affordability may play a large role in these trends, with Carolinas ranking highly in recent Realtor.com study of this study state-by-state affordability, and the states seeing the biggest outflows among the least affordable in the nation. It says states seeing the strongest net growth tend to score better on measures of affordability and home building activity. Now, again, the affordability, that's done by the economy and maybe job growth and certain incentives that's happening inside of those states. But the home building process typically comes from regulations and decoupling of zoning and those type of things, right? So maybe those states are doing something. That's something to dissect and pay attention to. If you're out there and you're in one of these states, elaborate in the chat and let me know. States seeing the strongest net growth tend to score. I read that. Okay, population change through domestic migration. There's your percentages. By the way, all of these links are in the actual YouTube description. You guys can click on those. You can read through this, dissect these on your individual state, get more information out of this as well. And this live stream is saved on my YouTube channel, so you can go back and check this out anytime you want. And I put chapter markers in there as well, so you can jump to certain sections. You don't have to watch the entire hour. You can jump to different segments. So be sure to check that out. And if you're getting value, you know, do the typical thing: like, follow, comment, subscribe, all those things. Thank you. All right. In contrast, states experienced the largest net outflow, such as New York, California, and Hawaii, ranked at the bottom of the affordability scores, while Alaska recorded the weakest home building activity across the nation, she adds. Look, poor Alaska. I mean, you guys got it rough. I will say it's a difficult area, weather-wise, climate, that kind of stuff. It's a hard climb. Separate census data from 2024 shows that of the 189,000 people who moved to South Carolina from another state that year, 18% were from nearby North Carolina, followed by New York and Florida. Meanwhile, Idaho drew most of its movers from Washington State, California, and Utah. We can skim over these data and just say, oh, this is boring to read. But this tells us something, guys. This tells us something. And we need to be paying attention to what these numbers mean. Ask ourselves questions like, why is this happening? What's happening in these states to cause this to happen, right? We are seeing buyers relocate from a wide range of states and for a variety of reasons, says Boise, Idaho real estate agent Lizzie Bishop, a top producer in the region who specializes in high-end properties. Bishop tells Realtor.com that top employment draws in the Boise area include healthcare jobs related to data storage manufacturer, Micron, and construction work. These states incentivizing corporations to move in by tax incentives is a good move. So some of these states are doing that. They're bringing in jobs and therefore people move in, right? That's how this works. So they're pulling in people from other places that the cost of living is so high, and the taxes that businesses get forces people to leave those states and go into the states that's offering incentives for them to move their companies there. Then people follow, and then housing follows, right? So definitely not rocket science. Florida and Texas still growing through moves, but more slowly. And there's your migration there. I got to wrap this up, guys. Sorry. But you get the idea. We got to pay attention to what's going on inside of these markets, why certain things are happening, and why they are happening. So what I would do is, in your market, I don't care if you were listed on this list or not, right? Here's my action item for you. I would identify the top 3 cities that are moving to your area or out of your area and find a sister agent in the area that they're most likely to move to, and then begin to build a referral business with them. If you have a referral department in your company, lean into them, talk about certain things. They probably have data that you can find out this information from. I would be talking to them. Hey, where's most of the people moving from my area to somewhere else, right? Or where are you finding most referrals coming from? That gives you information to be able to use to build your referral business into those markets, right? So that's what this information tells you. But it basically encourages you to get into your local data and see what's happening migration-wise locally. Okay, so that's where we need to be thinking. All right, now I would also maybe build some kind of guide that focuses on the cost of living in your area, right? Compare taxes, utilities, grocery costs to certain areas that most people are moving from into your area. So if you know the area that most people are moving from into your area, building this relocating guide, if you will, showing the taxes, utilities, grocery costs, et cetera, compared to where they currently live, and then running ads or social media posts or whatever, and focusing on that demographic in that city location, guess what? You're going to trigger referrals. So there is a way to market yourself. So again, when I say you can find opportunity in every single article, I'm not lying. There's opportunity inside of this article, guys, if you take advantage of it. It's here. And we can skim over this because it's like, well, my state wasn't listed. My city wasn't listed, so it doesn't really pertain to me, right? That's the typical attitude. It's like, oh, I don't really want to read this because it doesn't matter to me. Oh, but it does, because it makes you think. It makes you think about what's actually happening, and that's what we want to do. All right, final and last article of the day, and this is just for focus and conversation at most, right? All right, so this one is just more or less getting us thinking about social media. And the reason why I'm leaning into this is because it's at the core. I read through this morning and I was like, yep, that's what I would agree with. This is the way I would encourage my agents to do it, because I see a lot of agents out there that post trophies and not value. Okay, and that's what I'm going to say. It's like, and when I say trophies, I say when you sold a house, you post that, and if I go to social media right now, all I see is just sold, just listed, just sold. Here's my award. Here's how great I am. Here's how many people I represented. Here's my sales from last year. Sure, figure out a time to place those. But if your entire social media strategy is your trophies, the consumer doesn't care. I'm sorry, guys, they don't care. I mean, it gives you some ads, it does, but it doesn't build you a longevity referral business, and does not build a strong, lasting business. It just doesn't. I mean, I've been in this 20 years, guys. I keep saying that, but look, you test me. Go ask anybody else who's been in this industry for a long period of time, ask them how they build a business, right? I guarantee it's not about bragging about their trophies. At least to burnout. All right, so this is by uschamber.com. uschamber.com. And let's see, this is by Anna Bullock, a contributor, and it's under the Grow category and marketing. And the title is 5 Real Estate Agents Share Their Social Media Secrets. It says 5 highly successful real estate agents share the breakthrough strategies that help them build strong client relationships and rise above the competition. And it says this, the opening paragraph: social media has become a central tool for real estate agents looking to build trust, stay top of mind, and generate consistent leads. I like this. However, now in my biblical studies, when you hear the word therefore, and those type of comments, the however is a call to attention to address what was just stated, right? So, however, the most successful agents don't treat it like a billboard. They treat it like a relationship building platform. Yep. When you use the word social media, it's what it is. It's social, right? All right. Below, 5 real estate agents share the social media strategies that help them stand out, remain relevant, and grow their business. This is Jill Biggs. The title says Earn Trust Before the First Conversation. For Jill Biggs of Coldwell Banker Realty and the principal of the Jill Biggs Group, a social media acts like a continuous open house, keeping her team top of mind in a way that feels what? Authentic, local, and helpful. I love that. So Jill, well stated, right? What I post, I don't want to appear fake. I want them to know me, okay? I want to be authentic. When I'm trying to do what here is I'm talking to you as I would talk to a client or a friend, okay? I want to be me. I'm not trying to sell something, right? I want to be authentic. Do I succeed at that every time? Probably not, right? You guys can let me know in the comments if I do or not. But that's my goal. We need to do that. We need to be authentic. What do we also do if we're trying to build a real estate business? Well, we focus locally, but then we really lean into being helpful. We really lean into being helpful. All right, she says she does this. She said, I post a mix of engaging content like listings and community highlights alongside expertise-driven tips on pricing, negotiations, and home transformations, letting her personality show through. The quote that she gives is this: social shortens the trust curve. By the time followers reach out, they already feel like they know her and how her team operates, which helps the business scale without losing its personal touch. So let's just pause for just a second here. I think this is very good. I think what she is saying here is where I would just really lean into. The very end of her statement there, where she talks about expertise-driven tips, all right? When you have the idea, when you're getting ready to type up a post and you're thinking about something to post, you want to help give expert advice to your consumer reading your social media post. I want to deliver something of value. When she talks about giving pricing ideas, negotiation, how to negotiate deals, home transformation ideas, right? These are all about helping the consumer. Notice she didn't say anything about her trophies. She didn't say anything about that, right? Consistency is key. All right. Now the next one says be distinct and consistent. Alexander Chingus, principal of the Chingus team at Coldwell Banker Realty, believes the foundation of strong real estate branding on social media is consistency. When content maintains a distinctive look and feel, audiences begin to recognize posts instantly. Whether it's a community highlight or a new listing, steady messaging paired with the credibility of a trusted national brand can turn social media into a powerful growth machine engine. Quote, as a partnership, we recognize the importance of social media early on. Committing fully to the medium and not treating social media as a hobby or casual add-on to the marketing mix is what has made it an invaluable part of our business, he added. Now, I will say, great, good advice. Go back to what she said. Good advice. Marry the two. Marry the two. Build a brand that travels with you. Integrity. This is Rebecca Hidalgo, CEO and designated broker of Integrity All-Stars Realty. View social media branding as the foundation of longevity in real estate. Her advice is simple. Be intentional and sovereign with your marketing from day one. In other words, don't deviate. Figure out your marketing, what you want to look like, what that looks like. That's your image. That's your branding. Make it happen, right? That's your lane, right? Be consistent in everything. She goes on to say, many agents have moved companies and get stuck starting over. Keep your branding memorable and consistent. People move, and if you don't own your own marketing from day one, you will have to start all over when you move. Now, you got to follow your regulations and stuff like that, but you definitely want to differentiate yourself some way, right? It's very true. Focus on authenticity. Mike Fabry, a real estate agent at the agency, views social media as a way to stay top of mind rather than a direct selling platform. With a strong Instagram presence and a background in real estate marketing, he treats social media as an ongoing conversation that keeps him connected to clients, friends, and family long after transactions close. This approach turns social media into a modern extension of picking up the phone or meeting for coffee. He quotes this, "For me, the goal of social media isn't selling, it's staying top of mind. Social media allows me to stay genuinely connected to friends, family, and clients through every stage of their lives. It's a communication tool first, not an advertising platform. And I will pause. This is great advice. Now, if you take all this advice and you marry it into your entire marketing strategy, you're going to have a really good thing here. But what he's really saying is it's not just about posting. It's not just about getting your name out there, promoting yourself, and even just offering tips and advice. His approach is great. He's going into his social media and intentionally finding his clients and commenting on their life. He's probably DMing them. He's responding to every comment. He's engaging with them. He's paying attention to life circumstances. And if you have your core group of SOI that you work with, they need to be top of mind every time you get on social media and engaging with them consistently, right? Be present, but communicate with them. And then be local and specific. Brett Johnson, a licensed Colorado real estate agent and owner of New Era Home Buyers, emphasized the importance of specificity and localization. Posts that break down recent sales, explains as-is cash offers, or highlight neighborhood trends help potential clients see his expertise in action. Social media is no longer about getting noticed, okay? It's not. It's about reinforcing that I'm available and available with good and consistent information that supports referrals, media mentions, and brand development. Amen. And then this is the last one. Engage with your audience. Goes back to what the other one previous there said. Nikki Beauchamp, senior global real estate advisor and associate broker at Sotheby's International Realty, has long used digital marketing and social media as a core part of her business. Her approach is twofold. First, she focuses on relationship building through consistent engagement, treating social media as a space to listen and connect, not just broadcast. Second, she positions herself as a resource for market intelligence, design trends, and real estate education. Social media helps me stay top of mind and engage where my core audience is. I use it to share trends, lifestyle insights, and to listen and engage with major life changes while also positioning myself as a resource for market and design trends. There's a lot inside of this article. It's in the link of the YouTube channel. Check it out. Read these articles. Give a shout out to these agents and their advice. I think it was all really, really good, right? I think there's just a lot of meat inside of this. I think it was just helpful. It goes along with kind of what I'm all about as well. It's relationship focused, guys. Don't just make trophy posts. All right, just don't do it. All right, some action items I would say to wrap this up. You know, if you are thinking about personal branding and that kind of stuff, why not do like some of the behind the scenes stuff? And I'm not saying that you just take a photo and you say, "Hey, showing a house." Like, think of it this way. Think of like, if I'm going to take a post or make a video or whatever, make it where you're solving a problem for a client, right? Like not just a closing photo or anything like that. Get on and just make a statement with that post that shows a behind the scene of you solving a problem for your client. Now, don't name anybody by names, obviously, but you could simply say like, today we worked through negotiations of a home inspection with some repairs that came up and we had to go back to the negotiation table, and great client, did an amazing job. We navigated it. We were able to negotiate it. And then we ended up at the closing table, right? Those type of posts, right? Some kind of behind the scene of you guys working on this stuff together and that kind of stuff, solving a problem. Then I would actually pick one platform to master. Like, look, I think, to be honest, YouTube kind of is becoming, and maybe even TikTok to some degree, is becoming like the hub where then you use that as the base to launch everywhere else out. But it doesn't need to be the platform, but I think it just gives you some leverage there. But pick one and become a master of that rather than trying to be mediocre on multiple ones, right? Just pick one, maybe two, and master that and get really, really good at it and get very consistent. And then every single day, go through comments or, you know, your people in your sphere and go through and just comment, DM them, you know, be relational, connect, don't just post and get off. Engage with people on social media, be social, have conversations, those type of things. And make some videos. Video is not dead, guys. I think video is like is where we're at. We need video. All right. So that's it. I went a little over. I got close to being exactly 1 hour. It's 9:34 Eastern time. So thank you guys for being here. I do greatly appreciate you guys being here. As of right now, I will not be having a live stream tomorrow. Normally I would have it Monday through Thursday. I've got a meeting I've got to travel out of town for, so I will not be able to be here live unless weather changes, and I might be able to come on here and do a little bit of just news jacking here before I go into that meeting. But as of right now, I will not be having a live stream tomorrow, but I will pick back up and have one Thursday, February 5th, at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. So if you're watching, I will be back live where you're watching now. So I do appreciate you guys being here, watching. I thank you guys for that. That is your real estate brief for today. So here's the thing. If you did find this helpful, please consider hitting the like button, following me. That will help telling YouTube, TikTok, and everybody else that you want to see more of this type of content, which all obviously helps that platform be better for you and serve you better. And it also, does help me. And consider subscribing to join this community of real estate agents that are focused on building a business that is 100% relationship focused first. Look, there's a whole lot more I could be talking about, but I have ran out of time. I will see you this coming Thursday. Take care, and we'll see you then.